Norman was brilliant because he had the hardest job. He had to stand there and look at me. The second time around, I think we had the mocap helmets on, and I think our helmets got locked together, and they were almost falling off, but we kept going, and it just.
Hello everyone, e aí pessoal, eu tô aqui com uma coisa que eu nunca imaginei que eu faria, que eu tô muito feliz por estar fazendo, significa muito pro canal, significa muito pra mim como pessoa. Eu tô entrevistando Tommy Earl Jenkins, nosso querido Die Hardman. Eu espero que vocês entendam que eu tava extremamente nervoso, eu esqueci de falar que vocês precisam ativar as legendas do vídeo para verem em português. Durante a conversa houve vários spoilers de Death Stranding e também de The Last of Us e Red Dead Redemption 2, um pouquinho só. For everyone who's an English speaker, I'm sorry cause I was really nervous and you will listen a lot of weird pronunciation, but this was an awesome chat with Tommy and I hope you all enjoy. Tommy, welcome. I'm really glad you are here. It means a lot for me, for us Brazilian fans. Thank you so much for coming. Please present yourself.
Absolutely. As you know, I'm Tommy Earl Jenkins, and I play Die Hardman in Death Stranding. I'm very excited to be here and to have some connection with the Brazilian fans. I have had a lot of interaction with them on social media quite a bit and through some of the social platforms. So I know that there's a huge Brazilian following for Death Stranding and Kojima. And I'm very grateful. And everyone's been incredibly supportive.
Yeah, the community loves the fact that you're so receptive with the fans. It's not a normal thing. Sometimes actors, video game developers are a bit distant from the community, but you're really receptive. You interact with fan arts, messages, everything else. We are so grateful that you're the person you are.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. I think it's important. I think it's incredibly important to be able to have that connection with people who support your work, who support you as an artist and what you do. To ignore that would be kind of, I feel, a little disrespectful in some ways. I don't respond to everybody, but when I can, I do. And it's just one of those things that when you get so much support from a group, from a particular country or fans for whatever it is that you do, I think you as the artist owes it to those people to let them know that you hear them and you appreciate their support in some form or another. And it doesn't have to be for every single person or all the time, but once in a while, I think it's just letting people know that you hear them, you appreciate them. And because without the fans, a lot of this wouldn't even exist. There has to be, a market that caters to those people who love what we do. And if those people aren't there to buy the product or support the product or have an interest in the artists and the people who create this stuff, where would we be?
Yeah, and Death Stranding is all about that. There's a lot of things we'll talk about it. It was really important for me, especially for my channel, because I started my current channel, YouTube channel, 2016, the same year that Death Stranding was announced. I have way before experiences with expecting Kojima games with the community, and it was always something really beautiful. Everyone getting together to solve mysteries from Metal Gear Solid 5 that launched in 2015. It's something we can learn a lot of things together. I proceed. I won't talk that much. I want to start knowing what works have you done besides Death Stranding, of course, because you have many years of acting.
Sure. A little bit about me is I started my career in theater. and I started at a very young age. I also danced a lot, which is a completely different side to my career growing up. And then working in theater, having been and worked in London for many years, and then working in New York, Broadway, and summer stock, a lot of that sort of stuff. So stage has always been a part of my life. And when I got into TV and film, came much later, but that sort of came in various forms, whether that was, doing voiceover work or doing commercials or small parts in films and in TV shows. So moving to LA, obviously, I'm just kind of surmising it a little bit, but it was focusing more on the TV and film aspect, as well as building up the voiceover side. And the voiceover side mainly in terms of interactive in video games, but also in network television. So marrying those two together and sort of working alongside, it's sort of doing both things at one time. If you're not filming a TV show, then you're probably doing a voiceover, or certainly submitting for voiceover castings through my voiceover agent. It's just been a very interesting journey for myself. I think that it's a growing process that I still find a lot about myself.
What's it been, Sam? 10 years? Look at us. A bunch of deathless freaks meeting like this. Yeah, well, good to see you two. President's waiting.
And it's interesting because no one, I think, in the community was probably even aware of me or who I was until Death Stranding. But I have been working solidly for the past, 30 years, if not more, doing stuff, but that wasn't necessarily mainstream in the eyes of this particular demographic. So that's what's been really good about doing Death Stranding and working with someone like Kojima and becoming a part of his sort of legacy, if you will, and creating such an iconic character from one of his games that people will now forever remember in the game world. And so for me, that was a big thing, but it also opened me up to a whole world of fans that I never knew really existed until doing Death Stranding. And then it was making those connections, because obviously that's what the game is about. The game is about connecting and trying to rebuild and all of those things. And it's such an emotional journey. And I think partly that is also one of the things that helped me connect with the fan base, because of that sort of through line. So it's been good. It's been really, really good. But that's kind of my career in a nutshell, without going too deep in, because we'd probably be here all day. But yeah, that's kind of the journey in a short way of saying that.
You have worked in some games before Death Stranding, right?
Yes. I mean, I've done, Fallout 76. I've done World of Warcraft, Guild Wars 2. And then I have a few that are also coming up in the next, this year that are being released. Some things I have been able to talk about, some things I have not been able to talk about, but all in due course, you will certainly know. And I think a lot of people will be surprised at some of the things that will be coming out. And it's always an exciting time, because once you know that something is going to be coming out, you can see that the fans are very excited about it. And then they don't know much information other than they have a release date of certain things. Some of those don't even come for a very long time, but people get excited, and it's kind of nice to it's quite fun to watch the buzz happen, until all those things have been revealed. So, we have to, as the artists, sometimes have to sit on our hands a little bit, because we can't divulge any information.
Yeah, the video game community in general is more engaged with the product itself, just because it's way longer than a movie. With video games, we used to get deeper into things, discussions, because it's an extremely complex media, thousands of people working behind it.
Well, everyone has a specific role, whether that's in the development process of the game, or if there's creators and all of that, and there's so many departments to make something like that happen. And as you said before, that there is the longevity that you have within a game, over hundreds of hours for some, that you play. Whereas, a TV show is maybe a half hour to an hour long, and a movie's maybe 2 hours, 2.5 hours sometimes, and that is the story. That's what you get. But you spend a lot more time in a game getting to know the characters deeper, getting to find different journeys for them to take. And then once you've completed that, you can go back and play it again and find out something completely different. Taking a different path or different route may completely change the outcome of the game sometimes. I think that journey that people invest that amount of time with certain games is incredible. And also that people are so invested in certain characters that they become very protective of certain games. There's always this sort of rivalry that I start to hear, and also depending on what platform people are playing on, whether that's on a PlayStation or an Xbox or a Nintendo or whatever it is. There are those people who kind of they all have their preference, and so it's interesting. We do have obviously Death Stranding's coming out, the director's cut on PC.
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother people that will get a chance to witness that.
I had 112 hours of Death Stranding to complete
Wow.
it. And I still want to replay it when the director's cut comes to PC. Because
Yeah.
I have played on PS5, but from a friend. That's a really special journey for me. It's changed my life in certain level.
And was that for the good? Did it change your life for the better in some ways?
Certainly for better, but it was something so deep that the majority of people that is in my channel and also in other social medias know me from doing Death Stranding content. Since 2017, I've done a lot of analysis of the plot of the trailers, uncovering secrets, and in the process we learned a lot about science, history, philosophy, because Kojima games are always so rich in culture. Even with Metal Gear before, I learned so much that I can say Kojima games have formed me as a person for, 70%. He says 70% of his body is made of movies. Maybe 70% of my body is made of Metal Gear and Death Stranding.
Right.
I also have bought a Cupid
you've got a Cupid.
from Sam. Just don't tell Kojima Productions, anyone from Kojima Productions, that a cheap Chinese copy, please. I don't have money to buy the original.
Your secret's safe with me. I won't say anything. But it looks good. It looks good.
Yeah. Also, you have mentioned that you are doing other games, and one of them is Bayonetta 3, right?
Yes.
You have revealed in an interview, I don't remember where. I'm really glad with this because I love Bayonetta, and I think you deserve much more space in the game industry because
Thank you. Thank you.
your work in Death Stranding was something really impressive because you start as a character that gives a lot of orders for Sam. I have a friend that kind of hated Die Hardman for a time because he says, Sam, deliver this toy, deliver this pizza to someone. And in the end, he reveals himself in a way that it's so unique, so different from the other characters. It's so ironic because we have Fragile that is a really strong character, but we have Die Hardman. It's a person that can't die. In the end, he's one of the most fragile characters in the story.
Yeah.
He's someone that tries to hide his humanity, but he's a lot human.
He's incredibly human. I think that there is the one thing about that character is, yes, like many people who played it, I think Die Hardman becomes one of those annoying characters to people because he is always shouting orders at you and what you need to do. And it's sort of like, can't you do anything else but tell me what to do? And also his emotional detachment from anything else, I think is, he's a military man. He is there to be the right hand of the president. He has a job to do. He is not emotionally attached in any way to anybody at this moment in time, because I think he just sees things straight as they are and won't allow emotions to cloud his judgment in things that he needs to do. So everything's very by the book. And, most people will know that when you hear him, he is void of all kinds of emotion in terms of raising his voice or getting sentimental or any of that sort of stuff. You never get that. And so when, I know we'll probably touch on this and people will probably have questions about it, but, the journey that he takes, and then all of a sudden, the story that comes out from him and his character and his history, we then begin to understand why he is the way he is, but also at the end of the day that he is truly a man full of humanity, and that he does have just as much emotion as anyone else. And so to see that come, when it does come towards the end of the game and you get a sense of that, I think you feel for him, because all of a sudden he has been carrying this weight, all of this information with him for so long. And at this moment, he's confronted face to face with Sam, and it makes him feel that there is, what's the point? I need to get this out. I need to say it. And if for nothing else than his own appeasing himself of his own guilt, I suppose in some respects, but to free himself. I don't think he ever planned for that to happen. I think it was something that happened and it took him over, and he could not control what was happening at that moment in time.
I don't expect you to forgive me. But would you hear me out? I killed Captain Clifford Unger. I would tell you I did it for America. For love of country. But I didn't. I did it for her. Because I loved her with all my heart. She was everything to me. Everything. Now, I'm not trying to make excuses. I just want you to know that not a day's gone by when I haven't thought about it.
That scene, it's maybe the most impressive thing I've seen in a video game regarding acting. How a video game can reflect something really human, something that it's not strange because it's a game. In Death Stranding in general, but in that scene, your acting was so profound, was so in the character, that I think it's my favorite acting in a video game, certainly.
Thank you.
Along with Red Dead Redemption 2, I don't know if you know Roger Clark, that does Arthur Morgan. There's a scene where he looks into the camera and says, "I'm afraid," and starts to cry a little bit. That scene was straight in my heart. These two scenes, your and Roger Clark's, I don't know how to say it. It's just the most profound scenes I've seen in a video game.
I don't think I ever expected, when the story was being done and when we were doing it, I don't think I ever envisaged that it would have the impact that it has had on people. My job is I just kind of go and I do what's required and try and stay in the moment and really try and pay homage to the piece and keep the integrity of the piece, and also the vision that the director, in this case Kojima, wanted, and hope that it all comes out the way it should. But I never expected that the reaction online and across the platforms, and people, and also people reaching out to me who talked to me about that particular scene and how it really emotionally took them on a journey. I know how I felt when I did it. So to know that actually came across for those people who watch it, it makes me feel like, my job, I did my job. Because for whatever reasons, if you did not like him through the game, by this point at the end, you even if you don't want to like him, you do have to feel for him.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the things, that you can hate the character all the way up to that point, and then all of a sudden I think it's almost impossible not to feel for him in that moment.
The captain, saved my life. You know why they call me Die Hardman? Because he wouldn't let me die. He brought my sorry ass back home every time. And I loved him as much as I loved her. And when he stared me down, that ghost, I knew he was here to kill me, to make it right. And why shouldn't he?
That's something that a lot of people asked about when I told them to get some questions for this interview. How did you prepare for this scene? Because everyone wants to know how you felt.
Well, my feelings on it. How did I do it? Look, at the end of the day, just first and foremost, as actors, we have to pay attention to the text, to the dialogue, the backstory. We have to pay attention to the connection that we have with characters. We have to know all of these things. And when you know you have a scene to do coming up, prepare for it the best you can. And by that, I mean, be familiar with your dialogue, be familiar with your relationships to the characters. And then basically, when time comes, is to put yourself in that moment as best you can and really try to live in that moment. And sometimes it's easier said than done. But on this particular day, talking about that scene, is I knew when I was going in the day, and I believe that we filmed it after lunch one day. I think it was in the second half of the day. And it was just Norman and I on that day. And of course, obviously Kojima and the entire team working on it that day. And I remember putting myself in a corner and thinking about it, because I knew it was quite a long scene, and just to try to think about the connection, what I needed to say, how I was going to say it, how was I going to treat Sam in the process of this, what were my emotions, what was I feeling. I had to step into the shoes of this character and try the best way I could to deliver this information. All the while, whilst knowing I was going to deliver this, also trying to keep my emotions under control and not letting them get the best of me. But as you can see, that was impossible to do because of the nature of the information I had to deliver. I think his journey led him to take him to a place where even he, as the character, did not expect to go. Because we're talking about all sorts of things. We're talking about the history with Cliff. We're talking about, his love for Bridget. We're talking about, standing before and looking at Sam and knowing who he is. All of these things. And then thinking about the history and trying to, tell him about, why was he called Die Hardman? What was it that, he kept being brought back? And it was Cliff who did all of these things, who basically saved him every single time and kept bringing his ass back home. He had him to thank. That day, I just had to put myself in that. And when we started, we did it in one take. It was one straight go. And people kind of go, I think it just happened. And we did a second take purely for safety. And once again, that carried through as well. But that first one was just, I think, the one that just happened. And I personally, as the actor, didn't realize how far emotionally I was going to go. And I think it was just purely being in that moment. And Norman was brilliant because he had the hardest job because he had to stand there and look at me, you know, and convey only through his eyes what he was feeling. You know, there was this, you could see, and he's such a brilliant actor that you could see him stand there and you could see the wheels turning in his mind, trying to decipher everything that I was saying. And, you know, should I believe it? Should I not believe it? Should I be? And I'm feeling angry about it in some ways. And then just kind of being, in some ways, just distant and unemotionally attached, as he watches this superior man crumble at his feet, you know? But he was there 100%. And I'll never forget the day because he was there. And I could feel him being present 100% for the entire time. And even when we did it again, he was still there. And I think there was one moment the second time around, I think we had the mocap helmets on, and I think our helmets got locked together, and they were almost falling off, but we kept going. And it just, you know, it was because you just don't feel, if you stop, it breaks everything. And it's one of those scenes that you can't piece it together. I don't think it would not be very cohesive if you kind of go, let's just take it in stages, because I think there's an emotional journey, and that once that happens, it's like a roller coaster. You know, you don't get off until the ride is over, you know. But it was probably one of the most challenging things I've ever had to do, emotionally, and certainly for in a medium like, you know, in video games. But it was challenging, and at the end of that, I think everyone on set that day was emotional or had a bit of tears in their eyes at the end of it. You know, even Kojima was just, I think, kind of blown away by where it went to. But yeah, I mean, I'm very proud of it, and I think for years to come, I think people will hopefully look at it and remember what that journey was like and that particular character, and hopefully hold him in some high regard, just purely for his artistic and creative side, as well as his militant side and all of that. You know, it's all one big package, you know. But I'm appreciative, and I really appreciate everyone's thoughts and their appreciation for that particular scene.
He couldn't save his kid, his baby, and that's what brought him back. I guess when he saw I was trying to do my part for America, he remembered who he was. And he forgave me. God! But I don't deserve it, God damn it! There is no atoning for what I've done. God!
Well, I appreciate really much your explanation. I got a bit emotional because I'm a really big fan of this game. It means a lot to me. And when you talk for yourself to me, explaining how you felt, how everything that happened means to you, makes it a lot more special. It's something that Troy Baker said when he was recording the scene, one of the first scenes of The Last of Us, when the daughter of Joel dies. You know the scene?
I don't know the scene yet because I haven't played the game.
I recommend, because it's a game with really, really good performances and emotional story. In this scene, it was really hard for Troy because they had 14 takes more, even more. He talked in the making of the game. In the first one, he did that scene trying to show people how he is a great actor. But after doing it many times, he realized I can just go getting into the moment and do my job, because it won't work. The scene doesn't need me to be great. It needs me to do what the director is requesting.
Well, I think, and Troy's a brilliant actor as well, and I do understand that it is, if you do have to do certain scenes like that are incredibly emotional over and over and over again, you do have to rely, taking breaks in between, because you have to reset yourself. And it's emotional in order to put yourself back in it again in that moment. The more you do it, you kind of start trying to recreate what you did before. And the more you keep trying to do that, the more you're not living in the moment. I think ideally, if you were truly in it, some of the same things may happen again, but you also may find something new and different in the next take, because you're trying to live in that moment consecutively. And that's very hard, and especially with emotional scenes, because you have to try and get to that place where your emotions are so overwhelming that whether you scream or you yell or you cry or whatever it is that you do, it's a practice. And you do have to kind of, at some point, you kind of have to go, okay, I need to just have a moment. I need to take a break, so that you can let all of that go in order to fill yourself back up again. So it is very hard. And I have no doubt that Troy does an amazing job. He does an amazing job at everything he does. So
Troy was really young when he done this scene, considering every other characters that he played. He was learning to get this right, because Joel was a really complicated performance. It's an old guy he lost his daughter, he needs to survive. That's a great game regarding the story. I recommend you check it out. Let's see some questions from the community. There's a lot of interesting things. I try to choose as much as possible and making some connections to get it more straightforward. Let's start with the most frequent ones. How was the process of getting into this performance? How did you get into it?
I did an audition, put myself on tape. I did a couple of scenes that were sent to me that had been typed out, and I did the scenes and sent it back, and I didn't hear for a very long time. I didn't get a response for a very long time. But when I did, I still, at that stage, I didn't know that it was Death Stranding, and I also didn't know that it was Kojima. It was shrouded in secrecy. There was just very little given, and there was a little bit about the character, but not much. So it was left up to me to do my interpretation based on the dialogue, I think, that was given. And that's what I did. And then I got a call saying that they wanted to use me. And eventually they told me who it was. And it was my first time, obviously, ever working with Kojima. And also because I do voices in games. I'm not a gamer. I have played, but I'm not very much, I don't play a lot of games. And I'm thinking more about doing more of them now in the future, because the gaming world has just changed so much, and the games have changed a lot. And I'm really into, I love the story aspect. When the stories, and maybe Death Stranding had a lot to do with that, because I didn't realize it was on such a whole nother level of gaming for me, that it was interesting to see how the characters developed, how deep it got, and how connected you became with some of these characters and emotionally involved in everything. So, so I did the audition, I got called to do it, and the rest is history. That's how it began. That's the short.
I really like to know and also show to my audience how challenging making games is. Acting in a game as an extremely present character like Die Hardman is no less difficult. Performance capture, voice acting demands a lot of time. Die Hardman is a character that had hundreds of lines. Can you tell us about this? How long have you worked on the game? It's been like months or even years.
On the game, I mean, it was over a year off and on. Obviously, I'm not working every single day, but it was a long time off and on in the studio and things like that. I can't remember exactly when it started. I want to say it was in like January. I can't remember exactly the date, but it was a long process, as most of them are. You know, they're not made in a day, and it does take a lot of work. You know, and the difference in doing that versus something like TV and film is, I've said this before in some interviews, where I think doing motion capture can be very hard. It is very difficult because you don't have a lot of stuff around you. So you have to, as the actor, you have to dig a lot deeper than you normally would, because you don't have the set. You don't have all of the props necessarily, or you have something that might represent certain things. But you know, if you're supposed to be outside in the snow and it's cold and it's freezing, you don't have that. You know, so you have to pretend, and you have to dig up that emotion that, you know, makes you feel as if you are in those elements. And it takes a lot. It really does, and to make it believable. So you have to go a little bit further, I think, than you normally would in other instances. But it is hard, because I think you do have to, as the actor, you have to dig a lot deeper than you normally would.
I want to bring up a question from Alahir Barbosa from YouTube. He said, Mr. Jenkins, your final acting in Death Stranding's ending was incredible. What was your biggest challenge in the game? Have you had to act wearing the mask? I'm proudly grateful for the amazing work you have done.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your question, and thank you very much for your compliments. All of it was challenging. And yes, I did have a sort of prop mask that I could use for certain things, but I think at the end of the day, it was all very challenging because I had so much dialogue that I had to sort of get out. You know, and everything is, certainly the dialogue within some of the cut scenes and things like that were emotional. Some weren't as emotional, but everything was always about was being business. It was very, you know, taking care of things, you know, me getting things to move along, you know, making sure Sam was on board to do the job, and challenging in so many different ways, but also incredibly enjoying to do. And I'd do it all again if I could.
Perfect. So you have answered this question many times, but still people want to know how working with Hideo Kojima was like.
In a word, incredible. Here is a man who has an incredible vision in telling stories, albeit sometimes what can come across to us as complex. And certainly with this particular story with Death Stranding, he knew exactly what the story is. He knew what it was. He knew every character. You know, he created them all. He created this surrounding. He created everything. And so watching him work and being able to work with him was incredible, because you wanted to please him because you knew of his greatness. And also you wanted to be able to tell the story the way he wanted it told. He had great ways of communicating, and even though there was a language barrier, there's a great translator who would say everything, but I would always look at Kojima in the eyes, but I would hear the translator. And so, but he still had this amazing way of communicating, and you still could understand what he was saying. And he's very hands-on, but he also lets you do what feels natural to you. He didn't make us, or certainly not with me, he didn't make me do anything that didn't feel comfortable. That experience is something that I will treasure. He has become someone who sits very high in my world of directors, and I would definitely love to work with him again.
Can I help you? Holy shit. John,
Is that you? Captain, what are you doing here?
My wife's checked in. They don't want a repeat of last year.
The Void out. In Manhattan.
Pedro Santos from YouTube, he asked how working with Norm and Mads and the whole cast was like. How was everyone's reactions when bringing Kojima's ideas to life? He sends a hug and wishes you success.
Thank you very much, Pedro. I appreciate it. It was, in terms of working with the whole cast and everything, with Norman and Mads, Emily, it was incredible because everyone, we were all in the same boat. You know, we all had been given a role in this amazing story, in this project. And we all wanted to do the best we can, to be the best it could be. And so working with each one of those incredible actors, it was brilliant. And obviously doing a lot with Mads was brilliant because we had our journey as characters had such a connection. And we got along brilliantly. It was wonderful to watch him work. And I have most respect for all of them. And it was just nice to kind of be on the same footing and just working with them and seeing each other's process. You know, and everyone's process may be slightly different, but at the end of the day, we're all going to end up with the final product, that we're all aiming for the end goal, which is what we did. And then being able to come together and make this vision that Kojima had in terms of the story come alive was the best thing that we could have all done as unanimously. And I'm sure he's incredibly pleased by what we did because it was a very complex story. You know, I think I personally had to get it in small doses so that I could understand what it was. Because when you hear the story in its entirety, it's very difficult. I have the 2 books that I have yet to read, the Death Stranding novels. And I think that will probably help clear, even looking back on some of it now, you know, a couple of years after it has finished, I can still look back over and find how difficult of a story it was to follow, because there's just so many elements that you can get lost and trapped in, and also the connection with, you know, all the preppers and all that sort of stuff, and various people who come and go, and then their backstories. You know, I did a whole on my YouTube channel, I did an entire series devoted to Death Stranding, in which I read all of the interviews throughout the game that kind of get unlocked as you play, and some of the emails. And that was a lot. I mean, there was 10 episodes of that, but it was so much information that, you know, some people didn't get a chance to read. But it was wonderful to go back and dissect all of those interviews and see the connections that each character had, and then to have this open discussion with, you know, my audience during the course of it as well. That I even learned a lot of information that I didn't know about.
Yeah.
You know, so.
That's something that we saw with videos analyzing the plot and everything else. There's a lot of elements like chirality, that something that is mirrored, antimatter, and many other things from physics that we learned a lot. It was an incredible experience. And in the game, we still get amazed with some concepts, the Homo Demons, the Homo Ludens concept. There's another question from a moderator in Death Stranding Brazil, João. What were your thoughts when Kojima explained Death Stranding to you, considering it is really different from the majority of games and movies?
I had moments of confusion because it was unlike anything I'd heard, and it was talking about subject matters that I knew nothing about. And like you said, even talking about antimatter and chiralium and all of these things that I have, you know, and the void outs, trying to get everything back online and using the cupids and all these different things that they were significant, but it took a while to process how all of that came together and how it all worked. So, and to be fair, they said, listen, we know it's confusing. We know it is confusing. So that's why we'll give you little bits at a time so that you can and then you'll have questions. And then when you have the questions, you go, so Amelie is related to so and so, and then Bridget is connected to this person, and then Sam and Cliff and all of these things. So you start to slowly understand the connections. And I think once you understand what who each character is connected to and how, it makes things become a little easier. Because I think you need to know that kind of history first. I did. I know I can only speak for myself, but it helped me a great deal to know that side of it. But I was confused.
This is the only chance you'll get.
This one is from The Dark Sykes from YouTube. How do you feel about Death Stranding universe? You kind of answered that.
The universe, I think that the universe is it's an incredible place. I mean, even when you look at the game, you look at the landscape of this whole world and how all these characters fit in, even down to the BTs, and all of that sort of stuff, and dealing with timefall. It's an incredible world that in some cases, I personally wouldn't necessarily want to live in it. It's a little frightening, but it's a world that has all of these characters and the ability to go to the beach, and all of that sort of stuff is bizarre, but it is very interesting. And in that whole universe, I'm fascinated by it, absolutely fascinated by it. I think people can get lost in it. And I think one of the great things that he has done was make the world that particular world so explorable, that people can spend hours just walking around the landscape and never really feel like you come to the end. It's just like infinity. You just keep walking for hours, and then you think, okay, maybe I better get back to trying to play the game. But I think he's created a world where people can just wander off and explore to see what's over here, what's over there. And chances are you're going to find something. I don't think he makes it that way just to do it. You're bound to run into something that you would not expect.
I had in the episode 2 40 hours of gameplay, and you can pass from episode 2 in 5 hours or something like this. But the other part of the question is, what do you think about Die Hardman's decisions throughout the story?
Look, I think that he did what he had to do. I think the decisions that he had to make were not necessarily decisions that he was always happy with. I think he did things because he had orders to follow himself. I think he had other things to do as far as being that sort of military type person. And also, he's the right hand of the president. So like I said, he had to detach himself from all emotion. So decisions that he had to make, I think, were made for the greater good. And even though there have been certain things that people could probably look at and go, I don't think he should have done that, or I don't think he should have did that, who pulled the trigger? I don't know. You know what I mean? And it's one of those things without giving it away. And I think everyone's sort of like, well, did he or did he not? And I personally don't think he would have ever done something like that without having remorse. If you look at it closely, you can all, use your own judgment. Who actually pulled the trigger? Really? So yeah. I'll leave it at that. But I think, he loved Bridget. He loved Cliff. He loved Sam. I think he has a lot on his plate. The dude has a lot to deal with, trying to get the America back online.
It's one of the hardest situations from a character in Death Stranding. Sam has this challenge. Cliff is literally stranded in death because he can't go on. Yeah. But Die Hardman had to deal with this whole context with every character core in the story. That is amazing how you portrayed, how you could hide it until the end. Kojima Productions used Decima Engine, which was from Guerrilla Games that made Horizon Zero Dawn. And one of the most criticized things from Horizon were the facial expressions, but Kojima Productions, along with Guerrilla, managed to improve it to the level we saw in Death Stranding. The same goes when the character needs something like your mask, the night vision goggles like Cliff does that is invisible. So we have to keep in mind that besides the director, besides the actors, we still have the game programmers also working in the scenes. They work really hard to make it beautiful, perfect, the way we saw, because many things, how you said, you have to imagine how it happens. It's not always perfect, so they need to change a little bit. So that's an amazing collective work.
Yeah, I think what they've done with the facial capture of everything and people's facial expressions is incredible. Absolutely incredible. You know, I spent 2 days in San Diego down at the Sony studios down there, where we spent 2 days just capturing. I sit in a chair and I've got about, I don't know, maybe 200 cameras around me that's capturing every twitch, every wink, every pursed lip, every frown, every smile, everything. So they literally probably in some database have every expression that I've ever could possibly make, in which they will be able to use and have used, I think, during Death Stranding. It's incredible because it's even down to the tears, crying. That's all real. It hasn't been added on, because I know there were a lot of people who had asked in the past, did they add the tears and things on during that scene? I was like, no. If you look at the behind the scenes footage, you'll be able to see me actually crying with the helmet gear and stuff on. So they were incredible. They captured everything. And for me, I remember going into the studio one day and the team was saying, have you seen any of the footage yet? And at this point, I hadn't seen any of the footage. And they said, you're going to be amazed by what you see, because they have captured you like you would not. It looks exactly like you. And I had never had anything like that before, aside from, yes, you on TV or film. Yes, that's a different story. But to have this recreation, this animation of
digital character.
That was Siri. This animation, and it was like incredible to see it. And when I saw it, my mouth dropped, because I thought, oh my God, that's me. And it's doing all of these things. And it was incredible to see. So I think that's the other thing, is that how technology has evolved so much in this industry, that, now the bars being set, now people are matching bars and then trying to go further beyond. So I have no idea in the next 5 to 10 years what the technology will be like. It's incredible.
It will be awesome, because from the PlayStation 4 to PlayStation 5, the leap is really big.
Yeah.
Death Stranding is a PlayStation 4 game. I hope we got a second one with your presence. It's also something I would like to ask you. If Death Stranding, a sequel, would exist, you prefer it to be a sequel to the events, or a prequel showing how the things got the way they were?
It's interesting, because I have no idea what is to come. But I mean, I could see either. The thing about it is that the story is so intricate, and there's so many different characters that each character could almost have their own origin story, which sets itself off in a whole nother direction. I would love to see Die Hardman and Cliff's history before everything leading up to that, to see that young military side of how things were, and the relationship, and where Sam and all these other people fit in, and how that connection became. And then, of course, to think about a sequel in terms of where does it go after the presidency? Where does it go from that moment, and where the world is, and how Sam fits in? The possibilities are endless. And I think there are a lot of people out there who have their own ideas about what they'd like to see. Maybe fingers crossed that something will happen. Something is, we can only hope that Kojima is working up something.
Another question from Pablo Wolf from Death Stranding Brazil. Do you have any curious or funny story with Kojima and the cast to tell us? You already have told us about the helmet thing, but do you have anything else?
No, I think for me that was probably, don't get me wrong, we did have days where we laughed on set and things like that, but there was nothing that I can think of at this moment. That was the funniest, but it was funny because it happened, but the situation in which it happened wasn't funny because it was during that emotional scene, which was crazy.
Yeah.
You know, I'll probably get off of this interview and I'll go, oh, yes, of course, that. I remember when that happened. But there is nothing else that I can think of at this moment where we just all kind of lost it. But I'm sure I will. If I remember something, I'll send it to you in the email.
Nice. So we are approaching to the end, but still some few questions.
Sure.
Is there a specific video game franchise that you wish to work like in Death Stranding?
Yeah, I mean, I think The Last of Us. I've seen some of the cutscenes, but I just love the storytelling of things like that. And there are a few companies and stuff that like Naughty Dog is a great company that I'd love to be able to do some things with. And there's a few, but I'm just going to wait and see. And like I said, there's some things that are going to be coming out, which I can't mention about yet, but I think I'm very happy and proud to have worked with those companies and to take on the roles that I've taken on with them. So that's exciting, and hopefully people will enjoy it, and maybe a surprise to some people as well. So
nice, we'll be looking forward. Another person asked about a movie franchise or even a director you would like to work with.
Spielberg, definitely. But, you know, and anything in the Marvel world. I think there's a lot of room for things like that. And a lot of unexplored characters and things, because there's an entire catalog. I didn't realize how many Marvel characters there really were. I think one day I looked something up and I just thought, I'll just type in and see Marvel characters just to see some of and also some black characters that had been, you know, long forgotten in some cases that we just haven't seen or heard of for years. And then the list of characters that I had never even heard of, and you'd see them and think, who were they and what did they do? And it's an interesting thing to go back and see how some of these characters would surface in these new days. So yeah, definitely something along those lines.
Yeah, you definitely deserve a space in anywhere you like, because I think still you're not an Oscar-winning Hollywood star, but yeah. I think you have, and not yet. You have the potential to this. I think you really deserve it. Not because I'm a fan of video games. I'm a fan of Kojima and you're in Death Stranding. It's because your work is really splendid. Can we proceed to the last question?
Yes, absolutely.
This one is from Rafael Andrade, my friend from Death Stranding Brazil. He founded Death Stranding Brazil. What was the final message that you got working in the game, and how all of this changed your life?
In terms of the final message that I personally got from it was that there is so much more to life than what we really absorb and take on, and that tomorrow is not promised. You know, we do have the saying that, you know, tomorrow's in your hands, but tomorrow isn't actually a promised day to any of us. So the connection side of it, and also the gratitude of living every day and not taking it for granted, because we don't know. And to be fair, you know, Death Stranding was sort of like is run coherently with where we are in the times. You know, when the pandemic happened, we all looked, certainly with Death Stranding, we're like, did he know this was going to happen? Did he have any idea that how much Death Stranding is a mirror of what our world is going through at the moment on so many levels, So I've taken the message in terms that I will be much more compassionate. I will be much more forgiving, living in the moment and when dealing with people, and learning to not just let things get on top of me as much as they have in the past, and to connect. I think that's the biggest thing that could heal our world is for people to really connect a little bit more and understand. Everyone is different. Every culture is different. I think there's a big responsibility for us to have a little bit more of a respect for people, for each other, and I hope that will those times will change. I do hope so. Yeah.
Perfect. Obviously, this game changed your life forever because that's the reason we are talking now.
Correct. Absolutely. And it has changed my life. It really has. And like you said, being able to talk to you, I have one of the biggest communities that I've become connected with, funny enough, that I'm doing the interview with you, but is the whole Brazilian community, who has been so open and welcoming for this game and for myself. I remember I was meant to come to Brazil, to the Brazil Games.
Brazil Game Show.
Brazil Game Show, yeah, just before the pandemic. And then it couldn't. I was so looking forward to it, but I'll get there. I will get there. And I look forward to it. And I'm very, very grateful for the support from Brazil and all the fans and everything. So they've been wonderful. But it has changed my life. And like I said, it has. We wouldn't be having this conversation, as with many other people in the past that I have not been connected with. But to know that has affected my life is that I'm now connected with you. I will connect with you in the future. I know you're on Facebook with the group and everything, and obviously having the interview with you, and we'll just stay in touch and stuff. And I think that's a wonderful thing to be able to do and keep those channels open.
It's changed my life also because the great majority of people that know me in the internet, my work in the internet, is because of Death Stranding, is because of
Right.
the coverage I've done for the game. I've made a lot of friends. I learned to learn more of things of our world. It's something that connects us. It's something we have in common.
Absolutely.
Because when I played the game, I reached the ending. When Sam is walking on the beach, it starts, I'll keep coming from Low Roar. I don't know if you had finished the game.
I haven't finished. I've got close to the end of it, so I still haven't fully finished it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty long game for
Yeah.
people that's not a gamer. Gladly, we have the very easy option to get people easily into the journey.
Absolutely, and even I found that difficult.
When the music started, I started to cry just in that moment, not in the real ending, because that was the music in the first trailer of Death Stranding.
Right.
Everything that happened to me from this journey came to my head. Everything that all the people that I knew, the things I learned, really was something that changed my life.
Sure.
I'm redundant talking about this, but I think you really much it's... sorry, I can't really hold, because I thank you for coming here, for giving
of course.
the chance to talk with us, Brazilian community. I'm not amazed because, oh my God, you're a celebrity. I'm talking like this. I am emotional right now because you were an integral part of something that is really important to me. This game is well beyond from a simple game.
Sure.
It's strange to tell this to other people without knowing what happened in the journey, but it was such a ride, was something really special.
Yeah. The truth of that is that only you need to know that, and if I have been able to be a part of that and along that journey with you without even knowing it, and that it has affected you and other people that I feel absolutely honored that it has helped you in your life, and that you have had some incredible experiences because of it. How can that not make me happy? I'm very, very pleased to hear that. And then when someone becomes emotional about something, because no one has to know your entire journey necessarily, but the point is that you know it, you know how it affects you. And for you letting me see that and letting me know that, I feel honored about that and grateful, and I say thank you.
Yeah, so that's it. I thank you really much for coming. Sorry for the breakdown.
It's not quite a Die Hardman breakdown, though, is it?
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, though. Thank you for sharing.
If you got in contact with any person that worked in the game, just give us a shout out from Brazilian community. We really love what you guys do.
Well, I'd like to send all my love out to the Brazilian community, and once again, thank you so very much for all the love and the support to the game, and hopefully supporting me in future stuff that will come out, and hopefully we can chat again.
Thank you so much. I'm running out of words. Sorry, because I'm not a native speaker. I'm still expanding my collection
vocabulary.
Of words.
Yes, your vocabulary. Yes.
Yeah, and Metal Gear was a game that helped me a lot to learning English.
Brilliant.
This and a lot of other things, the Kojima games were important to me. So thank you really much, and we hope to see your next work as soon as possible.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate it, Lucas.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you. Take care.